But let me know when the microphones are on. Oh, they're on because it's transliterating for me. Okay. All right, so we have a special meeting followed by a work session. I will now call the June 15th special meeting of the Lane Community College Board of Education to order. I'd like to remind board members and staff or anybody else who needs to speak this evening to speak clearly into a microphone so that anyone participating in Zoom can hear what is being discussed. Do we have Angela in the Zoom room? Awesome. Can we see her on the screen if possible? Donna, Tammy. I'm going to just call you Tama or something. Can you go ahead and take the roll, please, Tammy?
Sure. Holly Johnson,
Here.
Angela Van Kraus,
Present.
Mike Eister,
Here.
Austin Volnagel,
Here.
Steve Mattel.
Here.
Rosie Pryor,
Here.
Lisa Fragala.
Here. So everybody's accounted for. The board will open the meeting with an acknowledgement that the meeting takes place on the traditional lands of the Kalapuya. And tonight, board member Angela Van Kraus will read our land recognition.
Thank you, Lisa. We begin our meeting with the acknowledgement that the land that we're on is the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya people. The Kalapuya were stewards of this very land for over 14,000 years before their traditional way of life was forever disrupted and destroyed. We start our meeting with humility and reverence for the original inhabitants, the Kalapuya. And I just want to comment that our board docs is available to the public and includes a link in this section to find out more information about the Kalapuya. So I encourage anyone following along to use that link and read up.
Thank you, Angela. Okay, so for this special meeting, we have one action item, which is the LCCEA contract agreement. And so I assume that we can adopt the agenda. I don't think we need flexibility. Is there any objection to adopting the agenda? Seeing none, we've adopted the single item agenda, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Hamilton first. And then we might hear from Michael Blade or Dr. Stalliard.
Thank you, Chair Fragola. Board, we're bringing to you tonight a 2-year faculty reopener contract between the LCCEA and management of the college. The contract is a approximately $1.9 million package, and the terms of the agreement are in your packet. The package demonstrates compromise and concession from both parties to settle a contract during a challenging financial time for both the college and our faculty. The goals met with this contract were to not rely on college reserves over the course of the contract, to not require layoffs to support the contract, to consider our equity inclusion goals in the settlement of the agreement, to ensure the cost of the contract was identified in the budget. We feel we've met those goals. Both parties are satisfied with the final agreement, and I believe I just heard that it was ratified 97%, 97%. Thank you so much. So we wish to thank both teams for coming together to make this work. And I am supporting this and bringing this to the board. Mike Blade and Dr. George Stalliard are here to provide any additional details and respond to your questions.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to say anything, Mike, or should we just go ahead and go to the board?
I think I said everything.
Okay, thank you. So we're going to go ahead and start with a motion and then we can have conversation. Austin,
I move that the Board of Education ratify the agreement between Lane Community College and LCCEA, conditional upon approval by the LCCEA membership.
I second.
okay, so moved by Austin, seconded by Holly. Is there any discussion? Yes, sir.
Sorry, I just want to make, I don't know if we need to redo it, but it's actually between the LCCEA, the LCC board and the LCCEA. It's not-
Understood.
It's not the college, it's the board that's agreeing with the EA.
I believe the word as I used, the Board of Education ratify. Is that good enough?
That's what you're doing, but when you
Okay.
read what the contract was between LCC and LCCEA.
I'll go ahead and
LCC board.
I'll go ahead and reread it really quick. The Board of Education ratify the agreement between Lane Community College Board of Education and the LCCEA, conditional upon the approval by the LCCEA membership.
Second.
Okay, so moved by Austin, seconded by Holly with an amendment. Hey, is there any discussion?
Just a brief comment on my motion. Having bargained before, I know it's a really difficult process. I want to thank everyone on both sides, management and labor, for the hard work and dedication that you put into this. It's not easy work. And I just wanted to appreciate all your time and your involvement. Thank you.
Anyone else? Steve?
I'm going to make a bit of a lengthy and impromptu statement. It's going to be imperfect, but I'll do my best. First off, I'm going to say that I'm going to vote in support of the contract, but it's not my preferred choice. And it will take me a minute or two to explain the complexity behind that, but I want to be on the record for doing so. Okay. In the last handful of weeks, during some executive sessions, we got a sense of where the board was in terms of how much we thought we could afford to authorize our team to negotiate with. And due to, I'll just call it poor process management, I believe our negotiating team got ahead of the board's wishes as a whole itself. And we have now been advised by our legal counsel that for us to vote against this, which I'm almost certain is not going to happen, would put us in a violation of some state policy and operating in bad faith, and would only make issues worse all the way around for everybody and bring us right back to the precise place where we were in terms of bargaining. So there's no value in voting against this at this point in time. And so I won't. And I believe I want to say also that despite the poor process management, I think it was done with the best of intentions. Things happen sometimes. I'm extremely frustrated with it. But at the same time, I recognize everybody was acting with the best of interests. I was planning to vote against this. I'm not going to, but I want to be clear about the reasons why. Since I've gotten here over the last year, I've learned that our enrollment is somewhere in the neighborhood of 40% in decline as compared to about 3 or 4 years ago. And that's putting enormous pressure on our budget going forward. We have also been told that our budget, of course, is based on a 2% increase as compared to last year. And we're almost certainly not only we're not going to make it, we're going to fall far short of it. It is really, really difficult personally to I'm not going to take the vote, but to stand up and say that I'm not going to support the faculty position on this, because I know them, right? I'm looking at Adrian right now. I know these people. I love these people. Some of them are my neighbors. And of course, they work really hard. And the thing that we want to do is reward them for that. So that is not the issue. I just think at this point in time, with the serious enrollment declines that we have, with my own personal commitment to try and hold that line on tuition, and so that we would not have to put a big tuition increase in front of this board, and ask our new president to advocate for it. We're almost certainly sealing that in now. I wanted to be able to vote against that tuition increase in good conscience. And I can't do that unless I explain why I'm suddenly forced to vote in support of this contract tonight. I just want to remind faculty who are in the room how difficult the situation is for this institution right now. The 40% enrollment decline is real. It's not going to come back at any time soon. And we all need to be pulling together, as far as I'm concerned, on that particular issue. And we have a strategic plan that we were planning to invest in to help us bring those numbers up and support students, not only in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. We are tying the hands of our new president, because she won't have the resources to make these kinds of decisions for years to come, because we've invested it all in the faculty contract. So for these reasons and others, I was planning to vote against it, but I'm not able to do that now because it will cause it will put us in a bad faith argument situation, which it's not worth doing. And I am frustrated about that. I just hope going forward, we can all learn a few lessons from the process, myself included, and keep students at the forefront of our thinking. We will absolutely end up 6 months from now filling the gaps that we have created in our budget with a tuition increase, something that this board has largely said that they are against. But this decision that we're going to take tonight will result in that decision 6 months from now, and I find that really disappointing.
Mike?
Yes, I appreciate the work that went into this contract. I also have had extensive experience in negotiating and know it is extremely difficult and emotional and draining on both sides. I've explained to my board colleagues, I think just as recently as our last meeting, that for the entire time I've been on the board, our expenses have exceeded our revenues every year. Each year, as we're approving expenditures, we are assured that we have found a solution that will remedy the problem for the next year. Whatever solution it was that we thought was going to solve the problem has not done that in the past. I realize that this faculty contract is only one expenditure out of many expenditures that the college is going to make. It's the one that we are considering at the moment, though. I appreciate Dr. Stalliard's ingenuity and work with the staff to find more coins in the couch cushions, but and I realize this is only your first time doing that, but I've worked with staff here for 5 years that have done that and been very confident that we found the silver bullet that was going to solve the problem for the next budget year. And in fact, maybe because of one-time money that came in from COVID, we won't have to dip into our reserves for a while, but that is one-time money. And I am very concerned about any future expenditures we have. And I will have this at the top of my mind when we are discussing any budget issues from now forward. We simply cannot continue to have our expenses exceed our revenues indefinitely. That is an unsustainable plan. And that is what we have done for the whole time I've been on the board. We can't allow that to continue. And I'm going to do the best I can to prevent that from happening in the future. It's not fair for that to all fall on the faculty. That's certainly not their, it's the board's responsibility to figure that out. But I'm going to be watching expenditures very carefully. And I hope that my board colleagues will join me in that. And I, in fact, have every reason to believe that a majority of the board agrees with that position. So that's the end of my comment.
Okay, I have Rosie and then myself in the queue.
Thank you. I too am grateful to both parties for their hard work to reach an agreement, and I am regretful for some miscommunication that has put the board and members in what I consider to be a difficult position. I'm a little more grateful to hear my colleagues on the board talk about their concern over expenses exceeding revenue. It's not 5 years for me, it's 11 years for me. And we've been using savings to try to balance the budget all these years. Everyone who works here deserves to be well rewarded for the incredible work they're doing. It has nothing to do with the value that we have for our faculty and classified staff and managers, and everything to do with the fact that over the course of the last 50 years, Lane has grown to a girth that exceeds its resource base. And the board is just not doing its job if it doesn't deal with that once and for all and put Lane on a good trajectory for the next 50 years. So I join Mike in saying I regret that the faculty union contract represents the opportunity to once again speak to that point, but it does. It's the expenditure that we're dealing with right now. So I have heard it said this evening by at least one colleague on the board that this will automatically mean a tuition increase. I disagree with that perspective. I think this board has an opportunity to make a choice to not increase tuition. And that, of course, will send the administration into having to find other ways to balance the budget. And I think it's time for this board to seriously consider holding the line on the unrelenting tuition increases that have been characterized, that have characterized our budget for the last 11 years that I've served on the board. So I won't be supporting any further tuition increases, and I hope my colleagues won't either.
Hey, Austin, I do have you in the second round right now, so. So myself in the queue, and I wanted to start off by saying thank you to both sides of the bargaining that occurred. I know it's hard work, and particularly to Michael Blade for your work on the side of the college, and I appreciate the effort that you made. I do think that there is somewhat of a false narrative around this particular board or the particular administration of the current president in terms of not being responsible around working towards fiscal responsibility. If anything, I have seen this in the time period that I have been on the board. I can't speak for prior to my joining the board in 2019, but I think that the board, since I have been on it, has we've outsourced the bookstore, we've outsourced food, we closed the CML. Dr. Hamilton has been exceptional at bringing in additional resources to the college. We got rid of one of the most expensive programs, the culinary program. We still have stackable credits, and that will be housed within the business. But I do think there has been an effort. And during that time, when I joined the board, we had very little reserves. We now have full reserves, and we did not dip into the reserves this time. We have full reserves, and we just sold PERS bonds. So I do appreciate the work that this administration has done around being fiscally responsible. And I think it takes a long time to turn a big ship. And I hear my colleagues, and I have said to some of you that I am also committed to engaging with this work. But I do want us to acknowledge the work that has been done to bring some fiscal balance to the college. And so finally, I also would like to say that we are a teaching and learning community, and there are two components to that. And when I think about an institution of education, it's about relationships. It's not the brick and mortar of the institution. And it's about the human beings that work in it. And I know that this is a challenging decision, but I do consider this an investment in our students by investing in our faculty. And I think that it's a really important part of the success of the students at this college, where you can't have a teaching and learning community without both students and educators. So I'll stop there. I appreciate all of the thoughts and deliberation and the communication that has gone on over this process, and the ability of board members to be respectful in their communication. And I think that I agree that with Dr. Hamilton, that I think it is in the best interest to finalize this contract tonight and to move forward with a new president in the fall in the direction that this board wants to put our shoulders to the wheel and work hard to make things go as well as we can possibly do, all things considered, pandemics and statewide funding, being outside of our control sometimes. Austin and then Mike.
I want to acknowledge why, especially with the way the world is right now, how it's really difficult to see a positive future, to see like hope in the future and so forth, especially in areas like higher education. But here's why I'm hopeful. Some of you already know this, that I had to evacuate from the fires of the McKenzie River. And I remember after the fires, and specifically when the rains came afterwards, seeing all the trees that were burned, the floodwaters that brought a bunch of silt and dust and ash and turned the beautiful McKenzie River blue, or the blue, beautiful McKenzie River, and turned it black. I remember looking all around me and seeing nothing but gray, black, and dead things. I walked around the McKenzie River recently and the water's blue. I've looked around the land and there's green things growing. COVID was a fire that hit higher education. It was a fire that hit our communities. And what I can tell you, having survived a fire, is that things grow back. And even though things will not be like they were in the past, higher education has changed because of COVID. And we've changed a variety of things that we thought we would always be doing it this way. And we have had to change those things. We saw decreases in enrollment, of course, and that has negatively impacted our institution. But I believe in a post-COVID world, that not only that we can grow back, but we can also thrive as an institution. And that happens not only because of the leadership of the board, the faculty and the administration and the classified professionals that work here, and the students and the student leaders that are within our institution. It will happen, and it will, and I'm really hopeful for that for a multitude of reasons. And I really, but I definitely want to appreciate why it's kind of hard to think of that in the moment, because I was there too. And things do come back, things do grow back. And sometimes even grows back better than what it was before. I really appreciate the in-depth conversation we've had and the tough decisions we've had to make throughout this year and throughout and the board who served during COVID, the tough decisions you had to make during that time period. And but don't lose hope. And I'm really hopeful for this institution and how it can serve our community and still be a gateway to higher education for so many people.
Mike?
Please, did you want to have anything?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I have worked, before I retired, I worked in higher education for probably 42 or 43 years and probably served 15 or 20 presidents, and had the privilege and opportunity to work closely with President Hamilton, as her first 2 years were my 2 years as board chair here. And in all that time and experience, I don't think I've ever worked with a college or university president that's more entrepreneurial, more resilient, more creative, more energetic, and actually more successful in a wide variety of ways than Marge Hamilton. When I listed my concerns about our finances, I neglected to mention that fact and the incredible places Marge looked to generate revenue, to cut expenses, to do everything within her power and authority, at times against very big odds and lots of resistance. And yet she was persistent and stayed upbeat and never gave up on LCC. So our problem is not with our president, or it's with our board. Our board has to give clear, concise direction and then hold our administration responsible. We have not been as clear and direct and precise as we need to be as a board. And that needs to change, or we're not going to grow back greener and bluer, Austin, I'm afraid. It doesn't just happen by good wishes. It happens because of hard work. And it's our board's responsibility to do that work.
I just wanted to check in and see Angela or Holly. Did you want to say anything?
Hey, Angela. I just want to say, yes, this has been a difficult process this last few weeks and these discussions, but I do appreciate the work that was done on both sides. But I think as a board, I agree with what Mike says. We do need to be more conscientious of our work as a board. And listening to my colleagues here is talk about what they've seen over the years. I think that really should resonate with all of us. And we should think about that moving forward. I'm hopeful that we will be greener and bluer in the future, and higher ed will grow out of the past that we've gone through. But I do think that we need to listen to what our veterans are saying to us as we move forward and try to grow this institution to what we know it can be. And I too will be keeping that in mind as we move forward in the next few months and 6 months from now, having those discussions. I'm going to remember this because it has been difficult. I'm glad that we're able to resolve it. I'm glad that the board has come together on this, but it is definitely something that we cannot keep going around and around and around, as I've heard my colleagues say they've been doing for, what, 12, 10, 7, 8 years, you know. But anyways, thank you to those who were at the board, I mean, at the table and going to bat for us, and to all my colleagues for helping me to understand this process, because it was pretty tense. Last time we were in this room together and trying to make a decision, and I kept swaying back and forth, and I really had to dig deep, and to our administration for offering a space for us to come and ask questions. I appreciate that from our president here leading up to now. Thank you.
Steve?
Well, my emotions got the best of me earlier this evening, and I don't want to leave things on that note. That's not my style in general. So I apologize for that. I try to find the humor in situations and still say something useful. I want to echo without repeating it all, a lot of the sentiments expressed here. You know, at the end of the day, we have to continue finding ways to talk to each other and listen to each other. And I'm doing that now, and I know you all are as well. And I hear and feel, you know, movement on the board going forward. And so I'm appreciative of that. I whispered to Marge earlier, and I'm just going to say it somewhat out loud now, that, yeah, I was frustrated. I was really frustrated when I found out some things this afternoon, but I'm still going to give her a big hug and wish her well when the time comes, and it's coming really soon. For reasons that others have already stated, and I'll underline a few of them, incredibly energetic and positive, and resilient. Those are the three. There are others, but those three come to mind right off the bat. So very appreciative of you, Marge, and I also want to extend my thanks to the staff who were in the room at the bargaining table on behalf of the board this past several months, but even beforehand. These things in some ways kind of go on and on and on year round, and there's issues to discuss and work with. And it's very tiring and difficult, right? We've lost senior valuable staff in the name of Paul Jarrell most recently, you know, to the contentious process. And I'm very sorry that has happened. I wanted to say that I just thought he was an absolute gem for this institution. I'm really sorry that he was a casualty of the process. I hope everybody can learn about ways to, you know, to do what we're trying to do right now, you know, and that's to listen to each other's perspectives, you know, give each other a hug at the end of the day, you know, come back tomorrow and try and be friends.
All right, I'm not seeing any other signaling. So Tammy, I'm going to ask you to call the roll. So we have a motion on the table to ratify the agreement between the LCC board and LCCEA, conditional upon approval by the LCCA membership, which has occurred. Tammy?
Holly Johnson,
Aye.
Angela Van Kraus,
Aye.
Mike Ister.
Aye.
Austin Volneggy.
Aye.
Steve Mattel,
Aye.
Rosie Pryor,
Aye.
Lisa Fragala.
Aye. So that motion carries unanimously. I am going to close our special session. And does anybody need a 5-minute break? Yes, seeing head nod. So the board will recess, I'll say until 20 of the hour. So when the big hand's on the Okay, great. Thank you. All right, I will now call the June 15th Board of Education meeting of the Lane Community College Board of Education to order. Tammy, could you please let the record reflect that all board members are present and that we took the roll earlier? And gonna go ahead and move us on to adopting this agenda with flexibility. Is there any objection to adopting this agenda with flexibility? Okay, seeing none, we've adopted the agenda with flexibility. And our first discussion item tonight is the strategic plan. And I'm going to turn that over to Dr. Hamilton, and then she may introduce someone else to speak with us about that.
Thank you, Chair Fragala. So the board had previously approved the strategic plan. We had the goals that was set, but the College Council took the past couple of months to review it again and to do a deeper dive and to look at the different things that had gone on since COVID and to really look at those objectives. And they reviewed all the feedback that the councils had spent quite a bit of time on. And they put it all together. They did their best to make some revisions that they would like the board to consider. And with that, I'll leave it up to Kyle, the Chair of College Council, President.
Good evening.
So could you, when you are speaking, could you remove your mask? Thank you.
Certainly, honestly, it feels pretty good. Thank you. Thank you for adding the strategic plan to the agenda this evening. We did review for many months, and we have some recommendations we'd like for you to consider. All of them we reached full consensus on recommending each one of these. Some are small, they're just for clarity. So for instance, under goal 2, we're recommending adding an Oxford comma. Real small stuff, but it's important for clarity. And some are a little more substantial. So for instance, under the human subsection in goal 6, we're recommending the addition of 3 new objectives. So thank you for your consideration.
Clarify in Oxford.
Indeed.
Proper English.
Oh, come on.
Grammar.
What would you like? What clarification would you like specifically?
Well, comma is one thing, an Oxford comma, I'm just curious what that is.
Would be if Brett, Kyle, and Adrian went somewhere, adding the Oxford comma would be adding a comma after my name in addition to after Brett's. 2 commas instead of 1, for clarity that it's 3 separate items instead of 1 item and then a pair of things.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not trying to embarrass you. I figured I had something to learn right here.
You embarrass yourself.
No, your freshman English teacher is embarrassing. Can we get the document up on the screen?
So can we pull up the redlined one? This
Mhm.
would be the easiest one
Yeah.
to see the comparison. Great, thank you, Brett. Okay, so Marge, did you have anything else? No, okay, so great. All right, I've got Rosie and followed by Austin. Okay, go ahead, Rosie.
So I want to thank the College Council for their work on this. I'm delighted that you're doing this work and you're invested in this document. It needs to be a living document and the objectives are absolutely your lane. I know you know from the board telegraphing a message that it feels really strongly about the goals, but you know, the objectives are the how, and that's your thing. Now, having said that, under the strategic investments goal, if you could scroll down to that, I think that's where this is. When it comes to facilities, stop up right there. I have some concerns about what I saw here. For example, I am not comfortable eliminating an objective to fully fund facilities maintenance, which is what I interpret this second bullet to be. We have a deferred facilities maintenance nut that exceeds $100 million. And I think the board was real interested in being purposeful in chunking away at that. So I'm not personally comfortable with striking out that objective. My concern about develop a comprehensive facilities plan that includes an analysis of real estate assets and cost benefit analysis of all the locations and so forth even begins to address deferred maintenance. To me, it speaks to something else entirely. I'm not real comfortable striking out the board's commitment to adherence to the CBA that we spent a lot of time thinking about and working on, and are even interested in talking with our legislative delegation about strengthening going forward. So, you know, here we have another strikeout, reduce outstanding deferred maintenance. I'm not comfortable striking that. That's how the policy board of this organization over the last 50 years has allowed that deferred maintenance expense to reach $100 million. And I don't want to participate in kicking that can down the road any further. So I just wanted to say, I really value the work. I just have some concerns about this particular set of proposed changes.
Okay. Rosie, were you finished? I did Austin, and then I have myself in the queue.
Two partial questions. The first question is a process question. So if we were, it would be an action item in the next board meeting to add these red lines, if we were to add any or subtract any and so forth.
So this is so we're in a work session. We're not going to make a decision
Mhm.
on this tonight.
Of course.
And what I was going to suggest is that because I don't also want us to get into the weeds of like fine wordsmithing and Oxford commas,
Mhm.
but if we, for the most part, feel comfortable with this document, we can, give our general approval to move it forward with whatever changes we need to identify. Or we could refer it to an ad hoc committee for that work to be done to bring back to the board at the July board meeting. So.
Absolutely. And second, it's actually a question. I don't like wordsmithing of documents like this, but I actually really appreciated a lot of the additions onto this. I feel like there was also a lot of additions here that were comments even made by the board in previous meetings and stuff like that. So around like workforce sustainability and a variety of other different BIPOC communities and so forth. So I really wanted to appreciate that. My question is at the very end here, the last comment, which is to ensure LCC, we said meets. What was the reason why the language of makes measurable progress towards meeting as opposed to meets? I mean, I'm kind of absolutist in my language, I guess, with these type of things. So I guess what was the reasoning behind that?
Imagine that was related to the difficulty of meeting that goal. It's a very difficult goal to meet, and there's a lot of work to do there. And we want to commit ourselves to trying to meet that goal, but we're not confident we can meet it within the time frame that's this plan covers.
Got it. Okay.
Any other comments from the board? Mike?
I don't know that I feel as strongly as Rosie does about the facilities language being as prescriptive as originally written. But I also feel like what is being proposed gives too much wiggle room. I'd like it to be tightened. I'd like it to be more prescriptive than what's being proposed, just in general without wordsmithing.
Okay, Angela, thank you. Seeing everybody point behind me. Angela.
Thank you, everybody, for pointing to the screen. Thank you for all this work. I was hoping, I'm not sure if we have enough time, although this agenda item does have a fair bit of time, if we could hear maybe just some high-level background of the conversations maybe that went on around some of the changes that were made. I think it would be helpful to understand sort of that context. The thing that I am sort of looking at is also in Goal 6, there were some identify and implement actions. And I'm curious, I guess, in particular about that, why and implement was struck. But in general, I'm just sort of curious about the process for coming to this revised version.
So I can talk about the process, certainly. Some of these items I don't remember. It's been a number of months. And if any of my colleagues who's sitting in the audience here who were there for these conversations wants to jump in, I'm happy to invite them. Our process started with taking your document and the list of changes from when we had originally worked in this document and going through that, understanding what those changes are, then reviewing all the different feedback we got from all of our different governance councils, and then going line by line through this entire strategic plan, asking everybody in the room, based on the feedback that we got, does this item cover what we're all trying to say? And then recommending a set of changes. And then at a future meeting, when we knew everybody that was on the council was going to be present, we'd vote on that item to make sure that we had consensus on each of those items. That's process. I'm sorry, I don't remember the exact reason for striking implement on some of those items under Goal 6.
Angela, was that some of what you were looking for?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Mike.
So I'm going to take this opportunity to embarrass myself. Goal 2, objective 1. I'm not sure what that first bullet, it isn't clear to me that that's a sentence, and I'm not sure quite what it's intending to communicate.
It's a three-part item that we are looking to increase college now enrollment, increase quality sponsored dual credit offerings for high school students, and increase concurrent enrollment of high school
Thank
students.
Awesome.
You might want to just stay there a little bit. Anybody else?
Seems like that.
So I'm going to make a suggestion. I've heard 4 very specific items that board members have identified. One is around bullet number 4 under goal number 6, human, around support and implement actions. And then there are 3 under facilities in terms of not striking bullet 3. 2, I counted wrong. 4 for the partial language, and 5. We could make those adjustments and with the understanding that if anybody had any other thinking that they wanted to direct to the direction of the chair, that those could also be brought to the board meeting. Otherwise, I feel like we could move this forward to for approval and include some of these recommendations. I also appreciate the work on the objectives. I concur with Rosie that we want our employees to have ownership of this because we expect them to implement it. Yeah. So anything else, or would Rosie, would those changes be satisfactory to you? And Angela, would you want to see that implement added back in there? So we're going up to human. And it's bullet 4, identify and implement actions. So the implement was deleted.
And you told us you don't remember why you struck him from the board.
Angela, would you- is it,
It is bullet 4. The new last bullet in the subsection also has identifying actions. I mean, if there's some compelling reason to not have implementation of those actions listed in the objectives, I'd love to hear it. It just, to me, it seems like identifying the actions is sort of performative, and implementing them is the thing we need to do.
I actually agree. Yes, Marge?
Yeah, I think I can offer some clarity. I think the group was extremely cognizant that strategies would come next. And strategies was where we would implement and put forth actionable things.
Yeah.
So if you notice, a lot of the first words are things like ensure, but it didn't say exactly how. So again, my memory is not that exact with each of these, but there was a definite conscious effort to not turn these into strategies.
Hmm.
Okay. Rosie?
Well, could we have a commitment to, when the strategy statements are crafted, that comes back so the board can sort of assure itself that some of these, why do you identify but you don't implement? I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So, we'd be able to see how the folks on the ground want to go about the house.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, two things happen next. So once the board approves the final objectives, then folks on the councils and the management team are going to work on the strategies and the metrics. A couple of you asked me, where's the metrics? Well, we got to get the strategies down. So we want to have metrics at each level. So that would be the next time the board, it would come in front of you.
With that additional information, I could live with just something down there under facilities that speaks to my concern over addressing deferred maintenance.
Mhm.
I don't need it to say fully fund industry standard annual, because maybe that's a strategy or maybe that's a measurement. I don't know.
Mhm.
I just want to telegraph the message to my colleagues that that's a real priority of mine, a real concern.
The last bullet that's under facilities, though, successfully adhere to the board's adopted goals of the bond, including community benefit agreements and reduction of outstanding deferred maintenance. Obviously, it's kind of a watered down version of what you
Kind of broad, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
a strategy
precisely. But it,
speaks to how we're gonna reduce that.
yeah,
I like the bullet right above it.
mhm. Yeah, actually.
Mike?
Brett, could you scroll up again to where the bullet we were talking, oh, that's it.
We want to go to facilities.
No, under human again, the last
Uh-huh.
bullet. Identify actions necessary to ensure all LCC employees feel welcome, included, valued, and supported. That is something I would like to have happen. I don't know how anybody can ensure the feelings of another person. I just don't know how that can happen. And so I'm concerned that we're committing to something we may not be able to deliver on.
Holly?
So I'm a little confused because this is called a strategic plan, but there's no strategies in it. It's just objectives.
The
And so-
strategies come next. We're still working on the plan. The
that
strategies.
Get
come-
added to this.
Yes,
Okay.
they'll get developed next. So, Mike, am I hearing you would want to strike that, or you're just expressing?
Well, I mean, it's a goal that I'd like to work toward, I'd like to commit to, but I don't,
Do you like the word encourage better than, now we're wordsmithing and I.
Yeah, I-
hate that.
I don't want to ensure how someone else feels. That's what I'm concerned about.
Any other feedback from the board?
So we're not going to go and approve this because clearly there's some wordsmithing that has to happen. And so are we gonna just send it back maybe and have them do some work on it? Like encourage sounds much better than assure.
So probably what will happen is that we'll make the changes that have been discussed and, you know, Rosie, and yes,
Well, I guess I want to ask.
Yeah.
I mean, based on what you've heard so far, do you prefer to take it back to your council and share the comments we've made? Do you want to be done with it and you wish they're not, I don't think we're making very substantive changes to what you recommended. I mean, I think 98% of what you recommended, the board is enthusiastic about. But I also don't want to deprive college council of the opportunity to take it back and polish it off if that's what you prefer.
Unfortunately, we're done for the year, so happy to defer to you completely.
Then I think you and I can just
okay,
polish it up and bring it back next month.
okay, so, I'm hearing the suggestion, or, you know, in alignment with what I was suggesting, that Rosie and I will polish it up and we've noted these changes and we'll bring that back. And it'll be part of our July board meeting. And that if anybody has anything else, they are reading it again.
The work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Change ensure to encourage. Okay. All right, excellent. Thank you. So let's go ahead and go on to board policies, and we are going to approach this a little bit different tonight. And considering that most of these are legally required and they're very straightforward,
Yeah.
Michael Blade is going to give us an overview. I'm expecting everybody's read them. And then if there are any that anybody would like to pull, we will discuss those. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Mike.
Yeah, so I think that most of these relate to criminal activities in some, hopefully with the missing student, it's not criminal activities, but relates to some you know, things that happen when, or you know, what the college is going to do if bad things happen. And so we talk about the emergency response plan, missing student notifications, workplace violence, reporting of crimes, child abuse reporting, local law enforcement. Most of these, I think, if you've read them, and if you've been in education for very long, you probably know most of these things. As far as the emergency response plan, it relies heavily on the incident command system, which I suspect many of you are familiar with, and is a way to set up a incident command if there is some sort of emergency, whether that be a fire, earthquake, you know, plane crashes on our property, active shooter, hopefully not. And for any of you that followed the Uvalde shooting, that the police commander that got there first was supposed to be the incident commander, did not know he was, which is why you practice these things. So anyway, if anybody has any questions about any specific ones, I'm happy to discuss those.
And then we do have quite a few that are legally required, which I know in the past the board has asked that be identified. So are there any that the board is interested in discussing this evening? I'm not seeing, oh, Angela. I was waiting. Go ahead.
I think I'll be very concerned if I didn't pipe up on the subject of policies. So I just wanted to say that I don't actually have anything to say about these, and I think they all make sense. They're all legally required. I'm in favor of moving them all forward. Thank
Great,
you.
thank you. And I'm not seeing anyone else, so we can move all of these to the consent agenda. Thank you. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to board self-evaluation. So in an effort to, be thoughtful and confidential, you did receive those compiled anonymously in an email. Should have had the opportunity to review them to inform our conversation. And the approach that this board has used in the past is to review the information from those evaluation forms to provide, to inform a conversation around priority areas for reflection at our retreat. And at our retreat, we will have an opportunity to set board goals, and we could certainly come away with some ideas based on this conversation. So with that in mind, are there any areas that the board would like to identify as priority areas for us to move forward to our retreat?
One of the things, this was mentioned obviously earlier in the meeting, but it's also kind of part of the survey aspect. I'm not going to talk about the comments in there, but the survey aspects about the board relations with the CEO. One of the lower graded ones was a board clearly delegates the administration of the college to the CEO, to the college president, essentially. I think that was mentioned earlier in the meeting today, and creating, and with a brand new president, creating clear and precise goals is going to be very, very important. I think we should definitely bring that up and have that be a very important aspect of our conversation. So yeah. But other than that, it was really informative, really enlightening, and I really appreciate all the board members for your comments.
Holly?
Mine is more around the aesthetics. For our retreat, are we ever going to actually retreat? And do something off campus, away from campus, I don't know, cook together, meditate together, walk together, hike together. And so that was just something that came up when I was thinking about a retreat. In addition to discussing our self-evaluation findings, comments from everyone else, but I would like to see a real retreat.
So doing something fun.
Yeah, at a different location, not in a room, not in a boardroom, not in a conference room, a classroom. Removing us from, our norm and actually retreating. When I take my staff to retreat, I take them out, to the hot springs or something, and, we cook together, and, we hike together, we walk together, we sit out with nature somewhere. We're not in our familiar setting. And so I'm hoping that in the future, when we have retreats, that we can consider something like that.
Anyone else? Steve?
Well, I'll just support Holly's sentiment, not for this time. I mean, I recognize things are in motion. But I agree. What I took from what Holly said is that, to some extent, retreats are about relationship building, right? And, exploring each other's, histories and who we are as people outside of our board responsibilities, because those things reverberate back in the boardroom. And I agree. That's just really valuable time when, that's time really well spent. So I just want to thank you for saying that.
Yeah, great. That's great. We for this retreat, we do have a consultant coming, and there will be parts of it focused on our relationships and our relationships with the, building a relationship with the new president. And we will be on campus in quite a very beautiful space. We'll be in the Longhouse, but maybe we could take a walk or something that day. Rosie?
I've absolutely lost my train of thought. I can't remember what the heck I was gonna say. Oh, never mind.
Okay. One thing that I did notice in the scores was one area where there seemed to be some uncertainty on the part of the board, and I know Rosie and I have had conversations about this in the past. Is the Board of Education's relationship with the foundation board.
Mhm.
And, you know, I know recently we've had conversations about the ideas of a capital campaign. How can the board be helpful and those different things? And so, I'm hoping that we can, in some way, reflect upon that. And I do know that the foundation board is very interested in also having, a really good working relationship with this board. And, even like at the level that Stephen Holly just mentioned, like just wanting to get together with us and get to know us. So,
Mhm.
okay, go ahead.
What I wanted to say is, part of the reason why I'm very enthusiastic about Holly's suggestion, is because this board is divided philosophically, it would seem. And I think a part of what accounts for that is the fact that this group of people really haven't had that kind of time to get to know each other better, to form trusting relationships with each other. And so I really hope that our consultant will take that into consideration in her proposal for how to structure the day.
Mhm.
Sorry, it's not in an exotic place, but like Lisa says, maybe we can at least get outside if summer will come
Mhm.
and the sunshine will appear.
Yeah, and, I know that our consultant Cindy, has reached out to everybody to schedule some time prior to the retreat. So, I will try to give her that feedback as well. So if others can do that, I think that would be helpful. Is there anything else anybody wants to share on this topic? I did have one more, thing I wanted to, see what the board thought about. I don't know how long the board has used this particular instrument. But I don't find it to be very robust. And I'm curious what others think and if there's any interest in identifying, another way to do it or another tool to do it. And, I know for myself particularly, I don't see any mention of, equity, you know, in this instrument. So I'm just curious what other people think about the instrument itself. Rosie?
I don't love it or hate it, but I don't think it's robust either. I thought the most productive self-evaluation conducted by a lane board that I participated on many years ago involved hooking up with ACCT in a process that they offered nationwide to community college boards. So they had each of the board members fill out a survey, but then all of the data went, you know, central. And so not only could we look at where lane board members agreed with each other about things or didn't agree with each other about things, but we could see how our responses seemed to compare to boards nationwide. So, you know, were we outside the norm? Were we well within the whatever? And I thought that was actually an excellent system. We did that once and then a couple of years passed. I mean, it generated a ton of discussion. It generated some topics that then lane board members wanted to pursue with each other subsequent to that conference that we attended and got that feedback. And so a couple of years passed and then OCCA offered the opportunity for us to do that again. And I want to say that was probably 2-3 years ago in that range. And so, it might be worth getting that back out to see if the colleagues on the board would be interested in
Mhm.
that system.
Great.
Just funny, I actually had a conversation remotely similar to that there was a past board evaluation thing that was done. And yeah, I think that's a really novel idea. And I think that'd be really useful for not only our institution, but Oregon community colleges as a whole. So we can see what, and especially in this post-COVID world, seeing how other boards feel about these different things. I know that there's certain evaluations where ranking is involved too. That also is kind of helpful, where you kind of rank different statements as opposed to doing a like you would have 5 different statements, and then one would be the most relevant to so on and so forth. That also can be really helpful in gathering information and sentiments that the board might have. So yeah, but I'm actually in full support of something like an OCCA board evaluation system and so forth. And if the board would like, I can bring that up in a future OCCA board meeting.
That
So,
would be great.
fantastic.
Okay, so I'm not seeing any hands. Move us on. Okay. So our next item on the agenda is a discussion around board chair and vice chair. And the practice of this board since I've been on it is that at a meeting, we have an open time when individuals can express their interest in being chair or vice chair and say why. And then at our next board meeting, we will actually make that transition. And will be a time at the beginning of the meeting when we have those decisions, and then the passing of the gavel occurs, so to speak. So let's start with board chair. Are there any board members that are interested in being board chair for the coming year? Rosie Pryor? Did you want to express your interest for that?
I've actually spoken offline to most of my colleagues and expressed my interest in running for chair this next year, primarily because we have a new president coming in. I'm the longest serving member of the board, and I'm real interested in supporting our new president to make a successful orientation and onboarding and transition, and finding out where all the bodies are buried and so forth. So that's my presentation.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? All right, great. All right, so I'll move with,
Is now an opportunity to speak in support of, or is it just simple self-nomination?
it's, right now, we're just hearing from people who are expressing interest, and then there'll be an opportunity for a motion at the next meeting and to speak to that motion. Is there any interest in the vice chair position? Austin?
Yeah, I especially want to be vice chair if, with Rosie being a board chair, because there's a lot that I can learn from you with your experience. And even though, yes, there are certain philosophical disagreements that we have, but I feel that the respect is there regardless. And there's things that we can learn from each other in that. And then overall, even though there is philosophical disagreements, I feel that this board has there is still respect, and also we stand by each other. And I definitely feel that in this board, which is very I think that's rare than in many cases. So with that, and so yeah, this I really would appreciate this opportunity to develop as a leader, develop as a board member, and to learn from Rosie in vice chair role.
Great. Is there anyone else who's interested in the role of vice chair? Steve?
Oliver, you put your hand up?
I was gonna speak on something. I'm not interested, but I was going to speak on something. Go ahead.
I would also like to put my hat in the ring for vice chair next year. My guess that comes to a surprise to some. It's something I've just really only really had a chance to think about in the last day or so, and it became clear to me that this was something we would discuss at this meeting and not next meeting. So I apologize for if it comes as a surprise to some. In terms of my qualities and what I might offer in that position, I hope anyways, after serving for 1 year on this board, it's clear to folks that like others, I care a lot. And that's not to try and distinguish myself from others that are, I think that's could be said of all 7 of us. Also, I'm very clear and detail oriented. And I pay attention. I think I ask questions that are designed to help all of us understand the issues at stake that much better. And I think I've also demonstrated, including today, that I'm willing to take an unpopular position and articulate the reason for it, not because I expect to win. I often expect to lose, but because I'm trying to play the longer game and help all of us sort of see what might be at stake and try and change some hearts and minds. And I think there's going to be the need for that in the years to come. So I put my hat in the ring for those reasons.
Anyone else? Holly, did you?
I actually had a comment, and I'm listening to my vice chair say that we are a divided group philosophically. And then I keep going back to C, item C, our self-evaluation. And I didn't mention this, and I apologize, but listening to us all reiterate what Rosie just said about assessments. And I'm hoping that that'll be helpful also for our facilitator at the retreat, that somehow we can implement some type of assessment and not just do an assessment for each of us. Implicit bias, maybe, assessment. Hopefully that can be a tool that we can use in our retreat, but actually discuss it, especially with somebody who's a complete opposite of, I would love to have that kind of conversation with a person on our board, in a retreat situation, working retreat and have those conversations, right? We've all had them one-on-one, but to have that come out as a board and for us to come together and share what we discovered about ourselves, right? You discover things when you do those assessments with yourself. I think that would be really interesting. So just listening to all of you put your names in the hat, and good luck to all of you. I think that would be a great tool to use. So, all right, I had to go backwards a little bit.
Totally fine. Okay, so I think we can move on to the next. Oh, Angela? No, okay. All right, so I'm gonna move us on to the board calendar. And before we go to questions, I did want to take a moment to explain some of the things on this calendar that are a little unusual. You're going to notice, first of all, in October, that the board meeting is not a Wednesday as it usually is. It is a Thursday. And the reason for that is that Wednesday is Yom Kippur, which is a high holy day, Jewish holiday. And so I would like to suggest that we have a Thursday meeting on October 6th, so as not to hold a board meeting on Yom Kippur. And you'll also notice that our work session that month is in Florence. It has always been the practice of the board prior to the pandemic to have at least one work session out in Florence, and we try to do it before it gets too rainy. So we don't really want to do it any later than October. And we are also hoping that most of the work will be done and that we might be able to get a tour of some sort. The other thing I wanted to point out is you're going to see 3 meetings in November. And those meetings are all spaced 2 weeks. The 11:30 meeting is our December board meeting. And then that allows us to have our work session on 12/14. If we hadn't spaced our meetings like that, we would have been having a work session right up to, I think, the 21st or something like that. So, so that's, our recommendation for those meetings. They're all still Wednesdays and they're all still 2 weeks apart. And then, of course, we have all of our weekly meetings in May for budgeting. But the other thing was, in January, we have the board meeting and the board retreat. They are only a week apart so that we actually do not start the first week of the month. So, are there any questions, concerns, or discussion around this calendar? If we, the goal is to make any final adjustments and then to move it to the consent agenda so that we have a calendar for the upcoming year. Rosie?
I would like to suggest that the board talk about this calendar at the July retreat. I mean, first of all, let me say thank you for building this. I really think you've done a wonderful, thoughtful job of building this calendar. And I really like having dates this far in advance so that especially those retreat dates, we can get them on our calendar and make sure that we're all available, because that time together is so valuable. Having said that, I wish we could talk about this a little bit. The board, it was a previous Board of Education that decided it wanted to hold 2 meetings a month. And prior to that, the board held 1 meeting a month. So when the board decided to hold 2 meetings a month, it effectively doubled the work of our administrative team. This is a substantial schedule of work for all of the administration to support the board. And I would be interested in learning personally if my current colleagues continue to feel two meetings a month is the right amount or not enough or too much or whatever. But we haven't talked about it as the current board. And I would just like to see us do that.
Mhm.
Anyone else? Mike?
I'm happy to have the conversation. Probably time.
Look forward to that conversation.
Okay, so, I think it would be good for people to note these dates just so, because in my experience, it's really helpful for us to have a plan and then we can, revisit this conversation, at the July retreat.
Mhm.
I would also be interested to hear, Marge, if you had any opinions about Rosie's comment, if you would care to share those at some point.
I think that quite a few of the board have been through both ways. We've been through what it was like. Actually, I spent today explaining it to our incoming president. So she does understand the committee structure. She obviously comes from that. So I would just say, just think about it. Think what maybe didn't work. Doesn't mean you couldn't try it again, maybe under different circumstances. And that you all have to be the ones to do this. So staff are there for you either way.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna move us on. I'm not seeing any other hands. Okay, last item is in this discussion section is board budget. And this is here mostly because I think, for the 2 years that I've been chair, it was primarily during the pandemic. And we didn't spend money on food. We didn't spend money on travel. We didn't have consultants really come. We didn't really spend money and nobody ever discussed a board budget with me. It just wasn't something that was really happening at the time. And then some conversations around travel came up and attendance at at conferences, and the budget came up. And so Rosie and I were talking about it, and she said that there was a past practice that the board did review the budget on occasion. And so it is here for review. This is the money we've actually spent. We are going to have less money next year than we have in this current budget. And this is in some ways just informational, though people are certainly welcome to share their thinking about it. One thing that we do need to be aware of is that the board does have a past practice of being mindful of how much we spend on travel, and that we established a practice that we only send, I shouldn't say only, but we tend towards sending about 2 board members to the very expensive conferences that are held usually by ACCT. We're by no means held to that. And that, a board member go to one of those conference in the budget year. One board member attending one of those conferences does cost us about $3,000 as a board. So it's here for us to think about, and maybe if we want to have any further discussions at our retreat about how we are fiscally responsible, I would imagine based on conversations tonight that is something the board wants to model. And then I was also asked to share the board policy 2735 about travel with the board, which I don't believe we have ever shared before. And so if people could just be sure to read that. I open it up to the rest of the board for any comments or questions. In some ways, this is just informational at this time. Okay, great. So that's all of our discussion items. I would like to go to board questions and comments, and I do have a closing item during that time. Are there any additional board questions or comments at this time?
I do.
Yes, Holly.
Donna, I just want to say thank you for all of your work and for onboarding and helping with everything, everything board related. I know this is your last meeting. I really just want to thank you and congratulate you on your retirement and have lots of fun with your grandbabies. And Marge, oh my goodness, I cannot even imagine not being in a meeting with you next time. So thank you to you too, for your hard work and going to bat for us, and just wow. Good luck in your retirement. Have lots of fun. I envy both of you. And so if you want to invite me out with you on a trip, I'll drive. No. Anyways, I just wanted to say that at your last meeting. Thank you both for being so open.
Great. And that was actually the item I wanted to wrap up with. Thank you, Holly, for kicking us off. That tonight is both Donna and Marge's final meeting with us. And I don't know if there are any appreciations from other board members for Donna or Marge. I did have the opportunity to appreciate Marge at her retirement celebration, and we'll miss you greatly and value your leadership and work on behalf of the college. And Donna, thanks for keeping me on track, pointing out when I was doing things wrong in a very effective manner, and I just really enjoyed working with you. And we do have flowers for you.
Already.
Tracking me, and there's also a present from the board. Very much. How many years, Donna? 17 in this role, but 32 in the college.
Wow.
Anyone?
Yeah.
Rosie?
Yeah. Well, everybody else got to say all the nice things about Marge and Donna. What I want to say is that I guess 5 years ago, I think Marge and Ron got off a plane and an hour later they were at my house for dinner. And she brought this box of chocolates, Marge did, that I told her, don't ever do that again because they were the best chocolates ever. I just have to say, I learned so much, Marge, from your being our president, because I spent my first 6 or so, 7, whatever it is, years, watching one person do the job. And when you came, I got to watch a totally different style and equally extraordinarily effective. All the things that Mike said, I wish I could remember so that I could repeat them, because that's what's in my heart too. Whatever bumps in the road that come along are bumps in the road, but the fundamentals have always been there. And I don't think I've ever met anybody who is as positive and resilient and I've never ever seen you do anything that wasn't absolutely dedicated to what was best for Lane and what was best for students. And I learned so much from you. So thank you for your 5 years with us. I'm just so grateful.
Mike?
There was one word I left out of my previous comments, and that word is integrity. You have absolutely done everything within your power to understand what we want and to try to do what we want. Maybe it hasn't always worked out that way, but you have made every effort to be true to the board and to be transparent. I've never had any question that you had any kind of ulterior motive. And I think that we have put you to the test a few times, and your integrity has also been just an exceptional aspect of your leadership and something I've really admired in working with you over the years.
Yes, please.
Only if you take your mask off.
Yep. So that phrase that we all hear too much, takes a village. It took a huge village. It takes a huge village. Each and every one of you brought so much. I mean, you've heard me talk about watching you during some really stressful times, like the bond campaign. I was in awe. You know when to pull together like a well-oiled machine. I have total faith that you will reset for your new president. I just know you will. It's going to be wonderful. I'm so full of optimism for this board. Obviously, we want to be a successful machine here, but we know it's about our students. I mean, that's it. We have the biggest challenge ever, not just at Lane, this whole country, about getting students to get hope again. And Austin, you did say it very well. And I think we have to instill the hope that it's going to be better. And the staff, like you, is very tired and they need to reset over the summer. And the faculty are very tired. And I think it's okay. And I think a couple of you said it in your own way. It's okay. So let's pull together. And I'm so happy for you. Get out and get a walk at your retreat. It was a very good idea. Your new president is so excited to be here. And I think kicking the ground with your enthusiasm to take Lane to the next level is awesome. And these folks that are sitting out here, I have to do the shout out because they've worked their tails off, each and every one of them. And, we don't always get it right, but we mean to. And I think I could talk an hour about each and every one of them, but they're wonderful. They work hard. And yeah, we are going to have to do a reset regarding post-pandemic enrollment. That, and I've told your incoming president, this is really, this is solving financial, this is the revenue issue. But it's been a joy working with each and every one of you. It really has been. And don't fret that you're going to you have differences of opinion. How wonderful that you have differences of opinion. That's what life is all about. What we all have to get better, though, is how to do that and then to pull together so these fine folks have the best guidance that they could have. Shane, you have been an absolute gentleman, a joy to work with in HR. I can't even tell you how lucky we are to have this expertise. Mindy leading us in student affairs, Brett leading us through public relations, communications, government, all of that stuff that couldn't be more relevant today. Our new attorney, you're not so new anymore though, are you? No, I don't think so. Okay. Our attorney, I mean, who literally keeps running. I looked something up. We have to do this. And George, thank you for choosing us. I mean it. I feel like we're blessed that you came and you took us. Adrian leading our union. I thank you. You know, we call those thankless jobs sometimes because it never stops coming. It just keeps coming at you and you have to make these difficult decisions. We've got your new team, by the way, your new A team out there, right? You've got Grant, you've got Patrick, Jennifer, Kyle, who did a superb job. I am in awe how well he led college council. So, and Paul, who couldn't be here tonight, and he's on to his new trajectory, but he served so well. You know, he got us through the accreditation. He got us through guided pathways and all these wonderfully hard things. And I always will have great admiration for him. So I wish you all well. I'll be following you. I'll be out there watching the board meetings and rooting you on and helping you maybe raise monies that we will need for all of these new buildings we're going to build. So thank you. It's been an honor and a pleasure to serve with you.
All right, you can all read the future meeting dates. With that, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you. And I believe we get to take flags home and other.
Just gonna hit it
Yeah.
that lightly?
Oh,
That's awesome.
oh yeah. Oh, this is so cool. Yeah. You want this one or?